Hello guys and welcome to the channel. This is Cameron here. This video is to show what my personal hopes and dreams are for the Elder Scrolls series in the future. Where I pretty much want the Elder Scrolls what I want them to do, and how I think that Skyrim fails to deliver on a few things, which in my view would have made it a great game. Now, just to clarify, like I'd like to do in any video I do like this, I love Skyrim, though while doing a bit of a playthrough of it a few weeks back, I felt that Skyrim fell on 3 points to be truly the next step forward, and I hope that this helps out. Most of these points will hopefully make sense to people. It's only 3 steps in all. Now, first step problem I always had with Skyrim was its companions. I always felt like when I first started playing Skyrim and my first companion ever was Lydia, just like most people who play Skyrim first off, I always felt like it wasn't really an in-depth character that you could really bond with. Like, after a while, you respect her and you bond to her because she's your first companion, and that's pretty much about it. Otherwise, as a personality, she's just a blank slate. Of course, obviously there's maybe some respects of they expect you to put your own personality onto her, but sometimes I just sort of like those creative touches that only can come from a properly written companion. Now, I know that Elder Scrolls was never really known for having companions. In fact, this is the first game that really gave you proper companions. I remember back in Oblivion, they were mostly just generic followers, except the special ones like, the Adoring Fan and stuff like that. And Morrowind, until they released Tribunal, if I remember correctly, they only really had the Pack Rat and the Merc. And of course, one thing I also should clarify is I'm talking unmodded games, just so you know. So anything in the bottom comments that talks about mods, this isn't aimed at that. In fact, I'll be getting to why that is later. Now, what I was trying to figure out is why it felt this way. And I realized why pretty clearly. Fallout. Bethesda brought the rights to Fallout and gave us 2 games. I remember playing with Forks at my side, acting as my bodyguard for these situations, but at least he had some sort of backstory, being a Vault inhabitant and having higher intelligence than most super mutants. And even Star Paladin Cross, who worked closely with your father and would only join you if you saw respect towards your father. Little things like that just gave these people more character than anything you really ever got in Skyrim, and Skyrim was made later with better technology. I mean, followers like Lydia, Eric, and even Serana never had the same appeal to me. Serana's character development was almost non-existent, and you did not really care much about her. I honestly know the only reason anyone would care about her, and it's just boobs. I mean, I hope the next Elder Scrolls really works on this and gives us fewer but richer companions. People who have the actual reason to want to die for us, and give us companion quests, dialogue options about their past, just like you did in Fallout. Sure, different developers, but surely they mingled since they use the same gaming engine. Also, take out fast traveling, which is probably a bit unrelated, because I think it completely ruins the open world. Morrowind was far better simply because it didn't allow you to just zoom through it unless you paid. Now, my second point is one big world, missing one important detail. Now, this is where it always gets me. You remember reading that? I remember reading this book in Skyrim. It's about how Titus took the Imperial City with only 1,000 men. It made a big emphasis on it only being 1,000 men. But how the Civil War in Skyrim had taking the lives of hundreds if not thousands of soldiers and lives in general. Now, my problem with Skyrim is that Skyrim doesn't seem big enough to support that when you think about it. Towns, when you put the whole population of Skyrim together, I bet they barely hit even some small number like 500 altogether. Now, Windhelm itself, which is meant to be this huge, magnificent, ancient city, only has about, it's the size of a small village in terms of grandness. Now, I would not mind that so much if the books did not keep sort of telling me about this whole amazing world with thousands of people and large cities which have tens of thousands of people. It just makes no sense. I mean, the civil aspect was the worst in Skyrim, and this is unmodded again. I'll just mention that. No open fights, and you know why? And it's because the developers knew that the battles in the Civil War, working with the limitations of what sort of world they had created, it looked ridiculous. You would have a group of 30 people fighting each other, which is not a civil war. It's barely a civil unrest. I mean, you saw in the Palace of Whiterun with a handful of men. The Palace of Windhelm, I'll repeat that, with a handful of men. I would not mind it so much if they just stop telling me all these other scenarios which are quite recent that involve so many more people. I mean, what they really need to do with Elder Scrolls 6 is they need to expand the cities. Again, not necessarily making every building enterable. Make random generated NPCs to populate them. I mean, not everybody has to need a name, but just make commoners like you had in Fallout 3, which were more there just for filler, that sort of thing. And if you do need names, just randomly generate them. I'm pretty sure you can put in like a random, 100 or so names made up for some particular race and 100 or 200 or so last names, and just put them together, bang, you have a name. I mean, that way you can have far larger cities, and as long as you expand the world around it enough, it's fine. Empty space is fine. I just want to be immersed in a world that makes sense. Now, my third point is probably not the most important, but it's something that sort of niggled me a bit, especially after Hearthfire came out, and especially I think it reminds me because Dragonborn reminded me a lot of these sort of things that I sort of missed. My fondest moment in Morrowind were the guilds. Now, I didn't really particularly get into the story that much. I mean, I did finish the game probably a handful of times. I think I finished the game with about 3 different characters all up. Each one, of course, joining a different house and taking a different speciality. I mean, I never really, I think my first guild I joined was House Redoran. Now, my problem with, my issue comes to this. When I was in the House Redoran, you had to do a multitude of tasks to get up in rank and sort of earn your position as council. So you had to have personal quarrels with people, you had to sort of work everything out. And when you think about it, it makes sense. And the guilds feel like, when you're actually part of those big guilds, you feel like the world is bigger than it really is. I mean, when you join the Imperial Legion in Skyrim, you don't really get any reward. Like, you become a legate, but you're like an auxiliary. You're not really important to the general run of the army. Auxiliaries were just practically foreign reserves that if you go to Roman meaning, like foreign reserves the Roman army used to do just to pretty much back up their own troops. I mean, that was it. Like, you're not really that important, and you don't feel like anything you do really matters, even at the end of everything. I mean, at the end of the House Redoran storyline, well, when you get near to the end, when you become the Councillor, the thing they get you to do is construct your own little manor. I mean, sure, it's in the middle of nowhere, and after, replaying it, I actually prefer, I think, House Halu, which had it near Balmora, but it became a physical reward for a position of power that you had worked hard to attain, and that's what I liked the most about it. In Morrowind, I mean, you could do simple things like join the Tribunal Temple, and your quest was to make a pilgrimage. I mean, it might sound boring, but the reward for these guilds was 10 times better than anything you got in Skyrim. I mean, you learnt a lot about lore and history and stuff from doing that pilgrimage. I mean, you could talk with everybody about these things, ranging from what they do, like, with actual NPCs themselves. Oh, sorry, I'll go back to it. You feel like, when you talk to everybody in Morrowind, there were whole stories and backdrops and stuff like that. In Skyrim, unless the characters have something to do with the main quest, there's not really a huge thing in personality. All the guards are bland and, just replace one with another. They're all just boring. I mean, you could talk about things like, how guilds in Skyrim, the only reward you ever seem to get is a really nice room, and the only guilds that give you a reward like that is College of Winterhold. And maybe, I believe, the Dark Brotherhood as well, give you that sort of environment, but otherwise it's just nothing special. And I think the main thing that eats me the most is Hearthfire, which was the closest you could get to that sort of system, that you build a manor, but the manor was the same in all 3 areas. They were exactly the same building. You can interchange if you wanted an alchemy and stuff like that, but if you're one character, I mean, one character doesn't really need something like an enchantment table unless you're really planning on making a jack of all trades, that sort of thing. Now, my main problem was Hearthfire appeared very rushed out. I mean, all the manors were practically the same design, they're all Nordic. I guess that sort of does make sense in a sense, but you do wish there was a bit more variety in what they could look like on the outside. I mean, I wouldn't mind, being able to make something like a plantation or a castle or something like that. Still in the Nordic style, but something that, more suited your particular character. And the problem is that the modding community down at Nexus made mods that did 10 times better than things that Hearthfire ever did. That's probably the main issue I have with all this. I mean, the Elder Scrolls 6, they need to add more variety in this sort of basic option. I mean, let me build and customize things a bit more. Give me permission to build a single health, but give me permission to build 3 different types. you know, for once. So you can build like a castle, a tower, or a plantation, something like that. Or, you know, and then I can decide a thing for the inside. Do I want it to be adventure? Do I want it to be, you know, stuff like that? Again, stuff which you got in games like Morrowind. I mean, in Morrowind you're able to customize your house, but sorry, in Morrowind you're able to customize your house. Sorry, I repeat that, Fallout 3. But you can do it in here. And again, it's not that I hate Skyrim. I played over 300 hours of it. I just think this game is... I think they're just spending so much time dumbing down the series. They just don't want to make these big features anymore because they're afraid it will scare people off. They just want it to say, oh, here's your sword and here's kill some bad guys, and that's it. What really disappoints me though is the Elder Scrolls Online, which is a MMO, is not going to have that modding community to keep them alive. I mean, other than, you know, they'll let you play around with the UI, so you can play around with the user interface like you can do in every other freaking MMO. But the problem is, I think Bethesda, to an extent, sort of is overconfident in their own abilities, and they've sort of taken the modding community for granted, which they don't realize how much they kind of rely on that modding community to make the game replayable. And that's the only thing that probably really bothers me about the Elder Scrolls Online, is that without those mods, the Elder Scrolls is not really replayable, and it's not really that great a game. It's actually quite average. Now, I'm just going to leave it there for now. And, you know, comment, subscribe if you like what I say, but comment and just tell me your opinions. Like, I believe this is a pretty common problem with this whole brand. See you. Bye.